The expensive car has been following the construction truck for 3 blocks now. Inside, a woman's hands shake as she grips a faded photograph. The face in the picture matches the man behind the wheel ahead. Ryan Mitchell signals left, completely unaware that his Monday morning routine has gained a shadow. The woman following him clutches something that looks like medical paperwork, her knuckles white against the steering wheel. She's been searching for this moment for what looks like years, but now that she's found him, she can't bring herself to get out of the car. At the red light, Ryan adjusts his rearview mirror. For just a second, their eyes meet through 2 windshields. The woman's breath catches. He has the same kind eyes she remembered, just older now, more tired. The light turns green. Ryan drives away to his construction job. The woman sits frozen at the intersection, holding papers that could change everything. 2 weeks earlier, Samantha Brooks sat in her corner office on the 42nd floor of Sterling Tech Tower, staring at a manila envelope that had arrived by courier that morning. The return address read, St. Mary's Medical Center, Patient Records Division. Her hands trembled as she broke the seal she'd been waiting 12 years to see broken. Inside were photocopied pages that weren't supposed to exist. Patient confidentiality laws had sealed these records permanently, but desperate times called for desperate measures. Her brother Andrew's transplant was failing, and the doctors needed information about the original donor. Information that had been locked away since 2012. The first page made her breath catch. Anonymous bone marrow donor, case file 7492. Below it, a black and white photograph paper-clipped to the corner. A young man, maybe 24, with tired but kind eyes. Even in the grainy hospital photo, she could see the quiet strength in his face. This stranger had saved her brother's life, and they'd never even learned his name. Andrew had been just 15 when the doctors delivered the diagnosis that changed everything. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia, the kind that moved fast and showed no mercy. Their parents had spent every penny they had on treatments, second opinions, experimental therapies. Nothing worked. The cancer was winning, and they were running out of time. Then came the miracle. We found a match. Dr. Patricia Hayes had announced on a Tuesday morning that Samantha would never forget. A perfect match. The donor wants to remain anonymous, but he's already agreed to the procedure. Within 72 hours, Andrew was in surgery. The transplant took. Her little brother lived. Now, 12 years later, Andrew was a successful attorney with a wife and twin daughters. He'd graduated summa cum laude from Harvard Law, built a practice helping families navigate medical bankruptcies, and never forgot that his life was a gift from a stranger. But gifts, Samantha had learned, sometimes came with expiration dates. The phone on her desk rang, jolting her from the memory. Miss Brooks? Dr. Martinez from Cedars-Sinai is on line 2. He says it's urgent regarding your brother. Put him through. She closed the file and steeled herself for what was coming. Samantha, I'm afraid I have difficult news about Andrew's condition. Dr. Martinez's voice was gentle but direct. The markers we've been watching have changed significantly. The transplanted cells are showing signs of rejection. It's not uncommon after this many years, but we need to act quickly. The words hit her like ice water. What does that mean, exactly? We need the original donor for additional testing and possibly another procedure. Without that genetic information, our options become very limited. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. Do you have any way to contact the donor from 2012? Samantha looked down at the file in her lap. I might have something. Give me 48 hours. After hanging up, she opened the file again and studied the photograph more carefully. The young man in the picture had a small scar above his left eyebrow and what looked like calloused hands even at 24. Working hands. The kind that belonged to someone who knew what it meant to earn a living. The next page contained information that made her heart race. Employment records from 2012 showed the donor worked for Morrison Construction Company. Address, social security number, emergency contact information, all there in faded typewriter font. Ryan Mitchell, age 24, single, no children listed. But that was 12 years ago. People moved, changed jobs, got married, started families. Finding someone after more than a decade was like searching for a needle in a haystack the size of America, unless you had the resources Samantha had built over 15 years of running a tech company. She picked up her phone and dialed her head of security. Trevor? I need a favor, a big one, and I need it to stay between us. By Wednesday morning, Trevor had worked his magic. Ryan Mitchell, now 36, still lived in the same city. He'd married briefly in 2014, divorced in 2018. One daughter, Chloe, age 8, still worked construction, though he'd moved between companies over the years. Currently employed by Henderson Brothers Construction. The photograph Trevor provided was recent, taken from a company newsletter celebrating safety milestones. Even 12 years later, Samantha recognized the eyes immediately. The same kindness, tempered now by whatever life had thrown at him in the intervening years. Thursday morning found her sitting in her car across from Henderson Brothers' main office, watching workers arrive for their 7 a.m. shift. She felt ridiculous, like a stalker or a private investigator from a bad movie. But she couldn't just walk up and introduce herself. How do you approach someone and say, "Hi, you saved my brother's life 12 years ago, and now we need you to do it again"? Ryan arrived exactly at 6:55, driving a pickup truck that had seen better years, but was meticulously maintained. He wore work boots that had been resoled more than once and carried a lunch pail that looked homemade. As he walked towards the office, she noticed he had a slight limp, probably from years of physical labor. That's when she made the decision to follow him. Just for a few days, she told herself, just to understand who he'd become, what his life looked like now, before she disrupted it forever. The construction site where Ryan's crew was working sat on the edge of downtown, a future office complex that would house law firms and accounting practices. Ironic, Samantha thought, that Andrew, whose life Ryan had saved, probably knew some of the attorneys who would eventually work in this building. She watched from her car as Ryan worked alongside men half his age, keeping pace despite being old enough to be their father. During lunch breaks, he sat alone, eating sandwiches that looked homemade and reading paperbacks with worn covers. He never pulled out a smartphone like the younger workers. Instead, he seemed content to watch the world go by. On Friday, curiosity got the better of her. She followed his truck when the workday ended, keeping a careful distance. He drove to an elementary school and parked in a line of other vehicles, parents picking up their children. A few minutes later, a little girl with pigtails and a backpack bigger than she was climbed into his truck. Even from a distance, Samantha could see her animated chatter and Ryan's patient smile as he listened. They drove to a small grocery store where Ryan let Chloe pick out ingredients for dinner. In the checkout line, Ryan carefully counted bills and handed over exact change. No credit card, no casual overspending. Every dollar accounted for. Their apartment complex was the kind built in the 70s and maintained just enough to pass inspection. Not run down, but clearly home to people who worked hard for every rent payment. As they walked up the external stairs to a second-floor unit, Chloe skipped ahead while Ryan carried both the groceries and her backpack. Samantha sat in her car until their lights came on, wondering what she'd gotten herself into. This wasn't just about saving Andrew anymore. This was about disrupting a life, a routine, a father and daughter who seemed to have found contentment in simplicity. Her phone rang. Andrew. Sam. Dr. Martinez called. He wants to schedule more tests next week. The numbers aren't looking good. His voice carried the weight of someone who'd fought this battle before and knew the stakes. I'm working on finding the donor, Drew. Give me a few more days. You found him? The hope in his voice was almost painful to hear. She looked up at the apartment where warm light spilled from the windows. I think so. It's complicated. Whatever it costs, Sam. Whatever it takes. Sarah's pregnant again, and I want to meet this grandchild. I want to walk both my daughters down the aisle someday, if there's a chance. I know, I'll figure this out, I promise. After hanging up, she sat in the growing darkness, watching the silhouettes move behind Ryan's curtains. A father helping his daughter with homework. A man who'd already saved one life without knowing it, now living his own quiet existence. In a few days, she'd have to shatter that quiet forever. But first, she needed to understand exactly who Ryan Mitchell had become, and whether the man who'd been generous enough to save a stranger's life 12 years ago would be willing to do it again. Monday morning brought the moment Samantha had been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. She'd spent the weekend rehearsing what she would say, how she would explain without sounding completely insane. But when she saw Ryan loading his truck for another day of work, all her careful preparations evaporated. Instead, she found herself following him again, like she had for the past week. The expensive sedan trailing the battered pickup truck through morning traffic. She told herself she needed more time, more information. In reality, she was terrified of the conversation that would change everything. At the red light, 3 blocks from the construction site, Ryan adjusted his rearview mirror and their eyes met through 2 windshields. For just a moment, time suspended itself. He had the same kind eyes from the hospital photograph, aged by over a decade of responsibility, but still carrying that quiet strength she remembered. The light turned green. Ryan continued to his job site, but instead of following, Samantha pulled into a coffee shop parking lot and called Dr. Martinez. Doctor, it's Samantha Brooks. I found him, the donor from 2012. But I need you to understand something. He has a daughter, a life. This isn't just about medical records and compatibility testing. If we do this, we're asking a man to potentially disrupt everything he's built to save someone he hasn't seen in over a decade. Dr. Martinez was quiet for a moment. Samantha, without that genetic information and his cooperation, Andrew's options become very limited very quickly. I understand the complexity of the situation, but medically speaking, we're running out of time. How much time? Weeks, maybe a month if we're fortunate. That afternoon, Samantha made the decision that would change 4 lives forever. She drove to Henderson Brothers Construction and asked to speak with Ryan Mitchell. The job site foreman, a weathered man named Bill Henderson, looked her over with obvious suspicion. Designer clothes and manicured nails didn't belong on a construction site, and his expression said as much. Ryan's working the steel framework today. He's not in trouble, is he? Because I can tell you right now, that man's solid gold. Most reliable worker I've ever had. No trouble. I just need to speak with him about a personal matter. Bill's expression softened slightly. Personal matter, huh? Well, I suppose everyone's got those. Ryan, he called across the site. Lady here needs to talk to you. Samantha watched Ryan climb down from the steel beams with the easy grace of someone who'd spent over a decade working at heights. Up close, she could see the changes 12 years had brought. Lines around his eyes from squinting against the sun, calluses on his hands that spoke of honest work, a presence that suggested life had tested him and found him unbreakable. Mom? Bill said you wanted to speak with me? His voice was exactly what she'd expected. Quiet, respectful, with the slight caution of a man who'd learned that unexpected visitors rarely brought good news. Mr. Mitchell, my name is Samantha Brooks. I know this is going to sound unusual, but I believe you may have helped my family many years ago. Could we talk privately? Ryan glanced around the busy construction site and nodded toward his truck. We can talk over here. Is everything okay? As they walked toward his vehicle, Samantha noticed his slight limp was more pronounced up close. An old injury, probably work-related, that he'd learned to manage without complaint. Mr. Mitchell, in 2012, did you donate bone marrow at St. Mary's Medical Center? The question stopped him cold. For a moment his face went completely blank, as if she'd just asked him about a dream he'd half forgotten. That was... He paused, calculating. That was 12 years ago. How do you know about that? The recipient was my 15-year-old brother, Andrew. You saved his life. Ryan's expression shifted through surprise, confusion, and something that might have been embarrassment. Mom, I appreciate you tracking me down to say thank you, but that really isn't necessary. Anyone would have done the same thing. The simple humility of his response nearly broke her resolve. This was exactly why she'd been afraid to approach him. Mr. Mitchell, I'm not here just to thank you. I need your help again. Something in her tone must have warned him that this conversation was about to become much more complicated. His posture straightened, and she could see him preparing for whatever blow was coming. Andrew's transplant is failing. After 12 years, his body is rejecting the bone marrow you donated. The doctors need genetic information and possibly another donation to save his life. Ryan was quiet for a long moment, staring at a point somewhere beyond her shoulder. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady but thoughtful. What exactly are you asking me to do? First, medical testing to see if you're still compatible. Then, if the tests show what the doctors hope, another bone marrow donation. I know it's a lot to ask, especially after all these years. And if I say no? The question was direct, without hostility, but Samantha heard the weight behind it. This was a man who understood that choices had consequences, and he was trying to understand all of them before committing to anything. Then my brother will likely die within the next month. Ryan closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them, she saw the same expression she remembered from the hospital photograph. Quiet determination mixed with an acceptance of responsibility that most people spent their entire lives trying to avoid. I have a daughter, he said finally. She's 8. Her mother isn't in the picture, so it's just us. If something happened to me during a medical procedure, she'd have no one. I understand, and I wouldn't ask if there were any other option. But, Mr. Mitchell, the procedure is much safer now than it was in 2012. Outpatient, minimal recovery time. The risks are very small. Small isn't zero. No, she admitted. Small isn't zero. They stood in silence for a moment, the sounds of construction work continuing around them. Samantha could see Ryan processing the information, weighing risks and responsibilities with the careful consideration of a man who'd learned that every decision mattered. Can I think about it? Of course. But Dr. Martinez says time is a factor. We'd need to start the testing process soon. Ryan nodded slowly. Give me your number. I'll call you tonight. As Samantha wrote her contact information on a piece of paper, she noticed Ryan's hands again. The same calluses, the same careful strength. But now she understood they belonged to a man who'd spent 12 years putting his daughter first in every decision. Mr. Mitchell, thank you for considering this. I know it's not fair to ask. Ma'am, fair doesn't really enter into it. A man's dying, and maybe I can help. The question isn't whether it's fair. The question is whether it's right. That evening, Samantha sat in her apartment overlooking the city, waiting for a phone call that would determine her brother's fate. At 8:30, her phone rang. Miss Brooks? This is Ryan Mitchell. I've been thinking about what you asked, and I have some questions. Of course. First, I need to understand the risks completely. Not just to me, but what happens if something goes wrong. My daughter would need to be taken care of. I understand. We can discuss all of that with Dr. Martinez. Second, I want to meet your brother. If I'm going to do this, I want to know who I'm helping. The request surprised her. You want to meet Andrew? 12 years ago, I helped save a 15-year-old kid. Now you're asking me to help save a 27-year-old man. I want to know what kind of man that kid became. Samantha felt a smile tug at her lips. Even in this situation, Ryan was approaching it with the same careful consideration he brought to everything else. I think that's a wonderful idea. When would you like to meet him? Tomorrow evening, if that works. Somewhere we can talk without making it feel like a medical consultation. Maybe over dinner. I'll arrange everything. Ryan, thank you. Don't thank me yet, Miss Brooks. I haven't said yes. The restaurant Samantha chose was quiet and comfortable, the kind of place where conversation could happen without feeling rushed. She arrived early and watched through the window as Ryan's pickup truck pulled into the parking lot. He was wearing khakis and a button-down shirt that looked like it had been carefully ironed for the occasion. Andrew was already seated at the table when Ryan walked in, and Samantha watched her brother's face as he saw the man who'd saved his life for the first time. Andrew stood immediately, extending his hand with the kind of genuine warmth that had made him successful in his law practice. Ryan Mitchell. I'm Andrew Brooks. I owe you everything. Ryan shook Andrew's hand, and Samantha could see him taking in the details. The expensive suit, the confident bearing, the wedding ring, the photographs of twin daughters that Andrew pulled from his wallet within the first 5 minutes. You don't owe me anything, Ryan said quietly. You were just a kid who needed help. Over dinner, Andrew told Ryan about his life, Harvard Law School, his practice helping families navigate medical bankruptcies, his marriage to Sarah, the twins who were now 6 years old. He talked about the work he did pro bono for families who couldn't afford legal representation in medical crisis situations. I've never forgotten that I'm living on borrowed time, Andrew said. Every day I've had since I was 15 has been a gift from you. I've tried to make those days count." Ryan listened carefully, asking occasional questions about Andrew's work, his family, his perspective on life. As the evening progressed, Samantha could see something shifting in Ryan's demeanor. The wariness was being replaced by something that looked like respect. "What about you?" Andrew asked eventually. "Tell me about your life, your daughter." Ryan's face lit up when he talked about Chloe, her soccer games, her straight-A report cards, her determination to help at the community center every weekend. He spoke about her with the quiet pride of a man whose greatest accomplishment wasn't anything he'd built with his hands, but the person he was raising. "She wants to be a doctor," Ryan said. "Says she wants to help people the way doctors helped her when she had pneumonia last year. Smart kid. Smarter than her old man. Sounds like she takes after her father," Andrew observed. "Wanting to help people." By the end of the evening, the three of them had moved beyond the medical crisis that brought them together. They were just people sharing stories, finding common ground, discovering that the ties between them went deeper than bone marrow and blood types. As they prepared to leave, Andrew pulled Ryan aside. "I need you to know something. If you decide you can't do this, I'll understand. You've already given me 12 years I wouldn't have had otherwise. If this is where the story ends, I'm grateful for every day you made possible." Ryan was quiet for a moment. "And I need you to know something. If I do this, it's not because I feel obligated. It's because after meeting you tonight, I can see that the kid I helped save became exactly the kind of man the world needs more of." 3 days later, Ryan called Samantha with his decision. "I'll do it. But I have conditions. Name them." "First, all the medical testing happens around my work schedule. I can't afford to lose days of pay." "Done. Dr. Martinez can work evenings and weekends. Second, my daughter doesn't know about any of this until we're sure I'm compatible and the procedure is definitely happening. I won't put her through worrying about something that might not even be necessary." "Understood. And third, if something goes wrong during the procedure, I need your word that Chloe will be taken care of. Not just financially, but really taken care of. She'll need more than money." The last condition made Samantha's throat tighten. "Ryan, nothing is going to go wrong. Promise me anyway." "I promise." The medical testing began the following week. Ryan would finish his shift at the construction site, then drive to Cedars-Sinai for blood work, genetic analysis, and consultations with Dr. Martinez's team. The process was thorough and time-consuming, but Ryan approached it with the same quiet determination he brought to everything else. 2 weeks later, Dr. Martinez called with the results. "It's remarkable," he told Samantha over the phone. "Not only is Ryan still compatible, but his genetic markers are actually better than they were in 2012. Sometimes the body's immune system changes over time, but in this case, he's an even better match now than he was originally. So the procedure will work. The compatibility is perfect. We can schedule the donation for next Friday if Ryan's agreeable. The timing is crucial. Andrew's numbers have declined faster than we anticipated." When Samantha relayed the information to Ryan, he was quiet for a long moment. "Next Friday? That's Chloe's soccer tournament. She's been practicing for months." "Ryan, Andrew's condition is deteriorating rapidly. Dr. Martinez says we can't wait." Another pause. "Okay, I'll figure out the soccer tournament. When do you need me at the hospital?" 6 a.m. Friday morning. The procedure should be finished by noon. "And Andrew will receive the donation the same day?" "Within hours. Dr. Martinez wants to minimize the time between extraction and transplantation." Thursday evening, Ryan sat Chloe down for the conversation he'd been dreading. "Sweetheart, I need to tell you about something important. Remember when I told you about how sometimes people help other people even when they don't know each other?" Chloe nodded, her 8-year-old face serious with the weight of important news. "A long time ago, before you were born, I helped save someone's life by giving doctors something from inside my body that could help a sick person get better. Like giving blood. Something like that, but more complicated. Tomorrow, I need to help that same person again, because he's sick again." Chloe processed this information with the careful consideration she'd inherited from her father. "Will it hurt?" "A little bit, but not too much. And it will help save someone's life." "Is that why we go to the community center every weekend? To help people?" Ryan smiled at his daughter's ability to connect the dots. "That's exactly why, honey. Helping people is one of the most important things we can do." "Then you have to do it, Daddy, even if it means missing my soccer tournament." Friday morning arrived grey and cold, with the kind of drizzle that made everything feel more serious. Ryan arrived at Cedar Sinai exactly at 6 a.m., carrying a small overnight bag and wearing the same careful expression he brought to any important job. Samantha was waiting in the lobby, looking like she hadn't slept much. Andrew was already upstairs, being prepared for his procedure. "How are you feeling?" she asked as they rode the elevator to the surgical floor. "Like I'm about to do something important," Ryan replied. "That's usually how I feel when I'm nervous." The preoperative procedures were routine but thorough. Dr. Martinez explained the process one more time, answered Ryan's few remaining questions, and confirmed that Andrew was ready to receive the donation as soon as it was complete. As they wheeled Ryan toward the operating room, he called out to Samantha. "Tell your brother I said good luck. Tell him yourself when you see him afterward." The procedure took 3 hours. Samantha spent that time alternating between the surgical waiting room and Andrew's room, where he was being prepared for the transplantation. Andrew's wife Sarah had driven in from San Diego with the twins, and the hospital room had taken on the atmosphere of a family gathering centered around hope and medical intervention. At 11:30, Dr. Martinez appeared in the waiting room with the expression of someone delivering good news. The extraction went perfectly. Ryan's in recovery and should be ready to go home this afternoon. The bone marrow is healthy and viable. We are beginning Andrew's transplantation now. Can I see Ryan? In about an hour, once he's fully awake. When Samantha was finally allowed into the recovery room, she found Ryan sitting up in bed, looking pale but alert. A nurse was going over discharge instructions, while Ryan listened with the focused attention he brought to any important information. "How do you feel?" "Tired, but not too bad." "How's your brother?" "They started the transplantation an hour ago. Dr. Martinez says everything looks good." Ryan nodded, then reached for his clothes. "I should get going. Chloe's staying with a neighbor, and I don't like to leave her longer than necessary." "Ryan, you just had surgery. You should rest." "I've had surgery before." "Work injuries, you know. This wasn't as bad as getting a rotator cuff repaired." He paused while putting on his shirt. "Besides, I want to be home when Chloe gets back from school. She'll want to know how everything went." As Ryan prepared to leave, Andrew appeared in the doorway of the recovery room. He was wearing a hospital gown and wheeling an IV pole, but his color was already better than it had been in weeks. "The doctor said I could walk around a little," Andrew explained. "I wanted to thank you before you left." The two men looked at each other across the small room. 12 years and a lifetime of experiences separated them, but in that moment they were connected by something deeper than gratitude or obligation. "Take care of yourself," Ryan said simply. "Take care of your family." "I will." And Ryan, "If you or Chloe ever need anything at all, you call me. I'm serious." Ryan nodded, understanding that Andrew meant every word, but also knowing he'd probably never make that call. That wasn't who he was. 2 months later, Andrew's test results showed that the new bone marrow had taken completely. His blood counts were normal, his energy was returning, and Dr. Martinez pronounced the transplantation a complete success. To celebrate, Andrew and Sarah decided to host a barbecue at their house in San Diego. They invited Ryan and Chloe, along with some family friends who'd been part of Andrew's support system during his illness. Ryan was hesitant at first. Social gatherings with people he didn't know weren't really his style, and Andrew's house in an upscale San Diego neighborhood felt like stepping into a different world. But Chloe was excited about meeting Andrew's daughters, and Ryan had learned that sometimes being a good father meant stepping outside his comfort zone. Andrew's house was exactly what Ryan had expected: beautiful, well-maintained, with a backyard perfect for entertaining. What he hadn't expected was how naturally he and Andrew fell into conversation, or how quickly Chloe bonded with Andrew's twin daughters over soccer and school stories. As the afternoon progressed, Ryan found himself talking with other parents about work, schools, and the challenges of raising children. These people lived in a different economic world than he did, but the fundamental concerns were the same: wanting their kids to be happy, healthy, and good people. Later, as the party was winding down, Andrew found Ryan sitting alone on the back patio, watching Chloe play with the twins in the yard. "She's a great kid," Andrew said, settling into the chair next to Ryan. "She is. Smart, kind, everything I hoped she'd be. She gets that from her father." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the girls chase each other around the yard with the boundless energy of childhood. "Andrew, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "What would you have done? I mean, if you were in my position, would you have said yes?" Andrew considered the question carefully. "I'd like to think I would have. But honestly, I don't know if I would have had your courage. You risked everything for someone you didn't even remember." "I remembered," Ryan said quietly. "Not details, but I remembered the feeling of knowing I could help someone live. That's not something you forget." 6 months after the transplantation, both families had settled into a new rhythm. Andrew's health continued to improve, and he'd established a scholarship fund for medical students who demonstrated both academic excellence and a commitment to helping underserved communities. Ryan had been promoted to senior foreman at Henderson Brothers, overseeing the construction of a new community health clinic in his neighborhood. The work felt more meaningful than anything he'd built before, a place where people could get medical care regardless of their ability to pay. Chloe, now 9, had started volunteering at the existing community center clinic on weekends, helping with filing and translating for Spanish-speaking families. Her natural empathy and growing understanding of medical terminology made her popular with both staff and patients. On Chloe's 9th birthday, Andrew and his family made the drive up from San Diego to celebrate. The party was small but meaningful, just family and a few friends from the clinic and construction crew. 9 years old. Andrew mused as they watched Chloe open presents. "You're becoming quite the young lady." Chloe's favorite gift was a children's medical kit from Dr. Kim at the community clinic, along with a promise that she could shadow different medical professionals during school breaks to learn more about healthcare careers. "Dr. Kim says I can help with the vaccination clinic next month," Chloe announced to the party. "And she's going to teach me how to take blood pressure." "What do you want to learn about most?" Andrew asked. "How to help people feel better when they're scared." "Like how Daddy helped you." As the birthday party wound down and guests prepared to leave, Andrew pulled Ryan aside for their traditional private conversation. "The transplant is holding perfectly," Andrew said. "Dr. Martinez says I'm healthier now than I was before I got sick originally. Sarah's pregnancy is going well. We're having a boy this time." "That's wonderful news. Congratulations. This baby will exist because of what you did." "Just like everything else good in my life since I was 15. Ryan was quiet for a moment, watching Chloe clean up wrapping paper with the same methodical care she brought to everything she did. "Andrew, I need you to understand something. What I did was just what anyone should do. The real miracle is what you've done with the life you were given back. The way you help families, the scholarships, the work you do. That's the part that matters." 6 months later, the community health clinic Ryan had helped build was ready for its opening day. The facility was modest, but well-designed, with examination rooms that felt welcoming rather than institutional, and a waiting area that accommodated families with children. Dr. Kim had been named the clinic's director, and she'd asked Ryan to serve as the volunteer coordinator, a part-time position that would allow him to help connect community members with healthcare services while continuing his construction work. Chloe insisted on being there for the opening day, and Ryan watched with pride as she helped elderly patients with paperwork and played with children in the waiting room. At 9 years old, she moved through the medical environment with the confidence of someone who'd found her calling. During a quiet moment, Dr. Kim pulled Ryan aside. "I wanted you to know, several families have specifically asked for you today. Word has gotten around the neighborhood that you're someone who helps people, and they trust this clinic because they trust you. I hope that doesn't create problems." "It creates the opposite of problems. These families are comfortable seeking medical care because they know there are people here who understand their lives and their struggles." That evening, as Ryan and Chloe walked home from the clinic's first day, Chloe was full of questions about the patients they'd seen and the procedures they'd witnessed. "Daddy, why do some people not go to the doctor when they're sick?" "Sometimes they can't afford it, or they're afraid, or they think no one will understand them. But that's why we have the free clinic, right? So everyone can get help?" "That's exactly right, sweetheart." "And that's why you help there?" "To make sure people know they'll be treated with respect." Ryan looked down at his daughter, struck once again by her ability to understand complicated things with perfect clarity. "Yes, honey, that's exactly why." A year later, Andrew was officially declared in complete remission. His son had been born healthy, and the scholarship fund had grown large enough to support 5 medical students annually. Ryan's community clinic had become a model for other neighborhoods, providing not just medical care, but also health education and connections to social services. Chloe, now 10, had decided she wanted to become a pediatric nurse practitioner. She spent her weekend volunteer hours learning from the clinic's nursing staff, developing skills in patient communication and basic medical procedures. On the anniversary of Ryan's second bone marrow donation, both families met for dinner at the same restaurant, where Ryan and Andrew had first talked 12 years after the original transplant. "A year ago today," Andrew said, raising his glass of water. Ryan saved my life for the second time. But more than that, he reminded all of us that the most important thing we can do is help each other. To helping each other? Ryan replied, touching his glass to Andrew's. To helping each other. Chloe and Andrew's daughters echoed, already understanding that they were part of something bigger than themselves. As the evening wound down, Andrew walked Ryan and Chloe to their truck. Ryan, I want to ask you something, and I want you to really think about your answer. Okay. Are you happy? I mean, really happy with your life? Ryan looked at his daughter, who was chattering with Andrew's twins about a science project. He thought about his work at the construction company and the clinic, about the community they'd built, about the quiet satisfaction of knowing that his life had made other lives possible. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, he said finally, doing exactly what I'm supposed to do. And what's that? Raising a daughter who knows that helping people isn't optional. Building things that make people's lives better. Using whatever I have to help whoever needs it. Ryan paused, watching Chloe demonstrate to the younger girls how to properly wash hands before handling medical supplies. Yeah, Andrew, I'm happy. As they drove home through their neighborhood, past the community center where they'd volunteered for years, and the clinic where they now spent their weekends, Chloe was unusually quiet. Daddy, do you think Mr. Andrew knows how many people he's helped because you helped him? What do you mean, sweetheart? Well, you saved his life so he could become a lawyer and help families with medical bills. And he made the scholarship fund so more people can become doctors. And he helped us start the clinic so people in our neighborhood can get medicine. It's like when you throw a rock in the pond and the circles keep getting bigger. Ryan smiled at his daughter's analogy. That's exactly what it's like. But you know what? What? The same thing happens when you help people too. Every time you translate for Mrs. Santos or help a scared kid feel better at the clinic, you're making circles in the pond. Chloe considered this seriously. So even kids can make big differences. Especially kids. Because you have your whole life ahead of you to keep making those circles bigger and bigger. That night, after Chloe had gone to bed, Ryan sat on their small balcony overlooking the neighborhood he'd called home for over a decade. The lights in the apartments around him represented families he'd come to know through the clinic, the community center, and the simple interactions of daily life. Tomorrow would bring another day of construction work, another evening at the clinic, another opportunity to use his hands and his heart to make someone's life a little better. It wasn't the life he'd planned when he was 24 and first agreed to donate bone marrow to a stranger. But it was the life those choices had led him to, and he couldn't imagine wanting anything different. His phone buzzed with a text from Andrew. Sarah had her ultrasound today. Baby boy is healthy and strong. We've decided on a name, Ryan Andrew Brooks. Hope that's okay with you. Ryan stared at the message for a long moment, feeling the weight of the honor Andrew was giving him. Another life that would exist because of the choice he'd made 12 years ago, carrying his name into the future. He typed back, "It's perfect. Can't wait to meet him." 2 months later, Ryan Andrew Brooks was born on a Tuesday morning, and by Thursday evening, Ryan and Chloe were in San Diego to meet the newest member of what had become their extended family. "He's so little," Chloe whispered, holding the baby with the careful attention of someone who understood how precious and fragile new life could be. "All babies start little," Sarah said, smiling at Chloe's obvious fascination with her new nephew. "But they grow fast when they're surrounded by people who love them." "Like how the circles in the pond start small but get bigger?" exactly like that. As they prepared to leave San Diego and return to their own life, Andrew walked Ryan to his truck for their traditional private conversation. "I know you don't like when I get sentimental about all this," Andrew said, "but I need to say something." "Andrew, you don't need to." "Yes, I do. That baby in there exists because 12 years ago, you decided to help a stranger. My daughters have a brother, Sarah has a son, and I get to be a father again because you chose to do the right thing when it would have been easier not to." Ryan was quiet for a moment, looking back at the house where warm light spilled from the windows and the sounds of family life continued. "You know what I've learned, Andrew? There's no such thing as helping a stranger. Once you help someone, they're not a stranger anymore. They're part of your story, and you're part of theirs." "Is that why you said yes the second time?" "Because I wasn't a stranger anymore. I said yes the second time because you'd become someone worth saving twice, and because I had a daughter who needed to see what it looks like when people take care of each other." The drive home was quiet, with Chloe sleeping in the back seat, and Ryan thinking about the strange chain of events that had brought them to this point. A 15-year-old boy's illness, a young man's decision to help, a reunion 12 years later, a second donation, and now a baby who would grow up knowing that his existence was proof that strangers sometimes become family. 5 years later, Chloe was 15 and working as a volunteer coordinator at 3 different community health clinics. She'd been accepted to a high school with a strong pre-med program and was already planning her college applications around schools with excellent nursing programs. Ryan Andrew Brooks, now 5 years old, spent his summers visiting his namesake and Chloe, learning about construction work and community service with the same natural curiosity that had made his father a fighter and his honorary uncle a builder. Andrew's health remained perfect. His law practice continued to help families navigate medical crises, and the scholarship fund had grown large enough to support a full academic program at the local medical school. Ryan, now 41, had been promoted to regional manager for Morrison Construction's Community Development Division, overseeing the construction of schools, clinics, and community centers throughout the area. The work paid better than anything he'd done before, but more importantly, it felt like a natural extension of everything he'd been doing all along. On the 15th anniversary of his first bone marrow donation, Ryan received an unexpected phone call. "Mr. Mitchell, this is Dr. Jennifer Hayes from St. Mary's Medical Center. I believe you know my colleague, Dr. Martinez." "Yes, Dr. Martinez handled my brother-in-law's transplant procedures." "Mr. Mitchell, we're establishing a new program to connect bone marrow donors with recipients for follow-up care and support. We'd like you to consider serving as a community liaison, someone who can help other donors understand the long-term impact of their decision to help." "What would that involve?" "Primarily speaking with potential donors who have concerns about the process and occasionally participating in donor drives to encourage registration. We've found that hearing from someone who's been through the process twice makes a significant difference in people's willingness to help." Ryan thought about the request. "Can I discuss it with my daughter? She's pretty much my advisor on these kinds of decisions these days." That evening, over dinner, Ryan explained the opportunity to Chloe. "So they want you to help convince more people to donate bone marrow? They want me to share my experience so people can make informed decisions about whether to help." Chloe considered this with the same careful attention she brought to all important questions. "Daddy, how many people do you think you could help if you did this?" "I don't know. Maybe dozens, maybe hundreds over the years." And how many people could those people help? Ryan smiled at his daughter's ability to think in terms of expanding circles of influence. I suppose it depends on how many of them turn out like Andrew. Then you have to do it, because if even one person becomes a doctor or helps other families like Mr. Andrew does, that's like throwing a really big rock in the pond. 6 months later, Ryan was speaking at his third donor registration drive of the year, telling an audience of college students about the decision that had changed not just Andrew's life, but his own. 12 years ago, he told them, I thought I was just helping one person. What I learned is that when you help someone, you're really helping everyone that person will ever help in return. You're investing in possibilities you can't even imagine. A young woman in the front row raised her hand. Did you know when you donated that you might need to do it again? No, I didn't. But I learned that helping someone once doesn't end your responsibility to them. It begins it. When you save someone's life, you become part of their story forever, and they become part of yours. After the presentation, 14 students signed up for the bone marrow registry. Ryan watched them fill out their paperwork and wondered which of them might someday receive a phone call asking them to save a stranger's life and what kind of ripples their decision would create. On the drive home, his phone rang. Chloe calling from her shift at the clinic. Daddy, guess what? Mrs. Rodriguez's grandson came in today for his college physical, and he asked me all about bone marrow donation. He wants to get tested to see if he can help his uncle who has leukemia. That's wonderful, honey. I told him about what you did for Mr. Andrew, and he said if someone like you could help a stranger twice, he could definitely help his own family once. What did you tell him? I told him that helping family is just the beginning. Once you learn how good it feels to save someone's life, you start looking for more chances to do it. Ryan smiled, thinking about how his 15-year-old daughter had somehow learned to see the world in terms of opportunities to help rather than reasons to worry about herself. That sounds exactly right, sweetheart. Daddy, I love you, and I'm proud of who you are. I love you too, Chloe, and I'm proud of who you're becoming. That night, Ryan sat on their balcony again, looking out over a neighborhood that had changed significantly in the 15 years since he'd first donated bone marrow. New families had moved in, children had grown up, and the community health clinic had become the heart of a network of services that helped people with everything from medical care to job training to childcare. Chloe was inside, studying for her biology exam and planning her application to nursing school. In a few years, she'd be in college, then nursing school, then out in the world saving lives in her own way. The circles would keep expanding, generation after generation. His phone buzzed with a text from Andrew. Just put little Ryan to bed. He was asking about when he's old enough to help at Uncle Ryan's clinic. I told him he has to wait until he's as old as Chloe was when she started. He's already counting the days. Ryan typed back, "Tell him I'll be waiting for him." There's always more help needed. A few minutes later, another text. Sarah and I have been talking. We want to do something to honor what you've meant to our family. We're thinking about establishing a community service award at the high school, the Ryan Mitchell Award for students who demonstrate exceptional commitment to helping others. What do you think? Ryan stared at the message, feeling both honored and slightly uncomfortable with the recognition. He'd spent 15 years trying to help people quietly, without fanfare or attention. But he also understood that Andrew needed ways to channel his gratitude into action. He wrote back, "I'm honored." But can we make it about the principle, not about me? Maybe the Helping Hands Award or something like that? I want kids to focus on the helping, not on any individual person. Perfect. The Helping Hands Award it is. For students who demonstrate that the most important thing you can do is help other people. Ryan put his phone away and sat in the quiet darkness, thinking about the strange journey that had started with a simple decision to help someone he'd never met. Everything good in his life had somehow grown from that moment. His relationship with Chloe, his work at the clinic, his friendship with Andrew's family, his role in the community, and now the opportunity to encourage other people to make the same choice he'd made. Tomorrow would bring another day of construction work, another evening at the clinic, another chance to throw a rock in the pond and watch the circles spread. It was exactly the life he'd been meant to live, built one small act of kindness at a time. Inside the apartment, Chloe called out, "Daddy, can you help me with this biology question?" It's about bone marrow and blood cell production. Ryan smiled and headed inside, ready to help his daughter understand the science behind the choice that had shaped both their lives. Of course, sweetheart. I know a little bit about that subject.